One of the cool advantages of saving your own seed is if you'll save your seed for 1, 2, 3 generations, by about that second or third generation, you'll have a variety of vegetable that works best for you where you're located. Welcome to my organic garden, where I've had a garden for over 25 years, and I've been saving seeds for a long time. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to select the seeds out of the catalog for that first purchase. And then I'll take you out to my garden and show you exactly how I choose the seeds that I'm going to save. And then I'll show you how to harvest them and how to store them. Now, don't be surprised if you see me in different outfits throughout this video, because the seeds aren't all getting ripe at the same time.
All I have needs I have not provided.
I remember eating a delicious yellow tomato from North Carolina mountains. I brought a yellow tomato home, sliced it open, saved the seeds, and planted the seeds the next year. And sure enough, I got a tomato plant. But the seeds weren't yellow, and the tomatoes didn't taste good either. So let's see, the mountains of North Carolina, subtropical Florida. It didn't work. When you're shopping in the seed catalogs, those descriptions that they have make you want to buy everything. But here's what you got to look for. I'll use myself as an example. I live in Florida, so I don't want a seed that says they do well in Canada or a seed that does well where it's cold and rainy. No, I need to find a variety of seed that works well in a hot, humid climate. Wherever you are, that's what you need to look for in that description. Oddly, for me, a lot of the vegetables that work well for me are strains that come from Italy, where it's hot and humid. Isn't that something? So read your descriptions really carefully. So that's the first thing to look for. The next thing to look for is to be sure that your seeds are not modified. You've got to be careful that you're not selecting seeds that can't be reproduced on your own. So be sure not to get modified seed. The next thing you need to look for is, are they hybrid or are they heritage? You can save seeds from hybrid varieties, but you're going to run the risk that your vegetables are not going to be the same as the parent vegetables that you grew in the first year. If you've got time to keep selecting year after year, you're going to end up with a variety that works well for you. But it takes longer to get seeds that are going to be consistent if you do it that way. The other way is to look for heritage seeds. Those seeds are going to be true to the parent from year to year to year. One of the most important things to do as you're selecting seed year after year is to keep track of what you're doing. And I have a garden journal where you can do that. This is one that you can print out. I have an electronic version as well. I use the electronic version, and mine's about 8 or 9 years old now, and it's about 50 pages long, where I've kept track year after year after year. It's easy to use and it's organized. Take a look, it's in my Etsy shop. So now let's go on out to the garden. I'll teach you how to select the seeds that you'll want to save for your next season. This is bush Blue Lake green beans. They're my favorite green bean to grow. I'd be willing to bet that most of you plant your seeds as early as possible so that you can avoid the frost that's going to come in the fall. I plant my seeds as early as possible so that I can avoid the torrential rainfall that we can get beginning in June and continues through July and August. So I was trying to beat that deadline. It's the end of May and it's already started. I normally would like to leave these beans on the plant for another week or so. They're not quite dry enough to my liking, but they're dry enough where I can go ahead and pick them now and let them finish drying in a place where it's not raining. When the beans got ripe, I picked the whole 2 rows that I have planted here in this bed. And after the first picking, then I marked a section to tell myself, don't go past this point. Leave these to go to seed. And that's my little signal to remind me, don't harvest everything. I've got to save some seed back. When I have beans like that, I'm going to go ahead and shell them. These may or may not be any good. We'll see. Do you see how important it is for me to get these beans picked now and get them to a dry place? Look, this one already tried to sprout. That's because it was sitting in a wet pod. If they had been dry, they wouldn't have done that. Looks like the rest of them are going to be okay. These green beans are not ready. They're too far along to want to eat them as green beans, so I'm going to go ahead and leave them on there, see if they'll go ahead and develop seeds. All of these are going to have viable seeds inside. These pods right here have got to be shelled right away so that this mold doesn't affect the seeds that are on the inside. Now, if you want to, you can just pull the whole plant up and just pick them like that. I like to put my plants right back into the ground that they came from, so I'm going to be burying my plants right here in the same bed. I'll leave my marigold plant here. Marigolds are good to keep nematodes away from your green bean plants. It really does work. This was a plant that I marked with a stick because it was very prolific, but look, just 2 days of rain and look what happened to the beans. I don't know if these will be any good or not, but I'm going to shell them anyway and see what's inside. These are Henderson bush beans, and in an ideal situation, you would come and look for some plants that are really, really prolific, and you mark it with a stick or maybe a piece of ribbon or string, and you don't pick the seeds from it. Unfortunately, I don't have that choice this season because it is raining cats and dogs day after day. And I'm just going to have to go ahead and choose the seeds or the pods that are already started to dry out and use those for my seeds for next year. Let me show you what a prolific plant looks like. Here's an example of a plant that has a lot of pods on it. And that is what I'm looking for when I'm looking for plants to save seeds from. Now, when they get to this point, you need to go ahead and pick them because as you see in my situation, it's all wet down there. And those pods that are at the bottom are going to mildew and mold within a couple of days. Now I've let the beans dry for about 24 hours. It just makes it easier to shell when you dry the pods out. They're really easy to shell. Just pinch them and they'll pop open. If the pods are dry, it's a breeze. Pinch it, pops open, the beans come right out. Do you notice the sheet that's under me? That way I don't have to try to aim and get it into a different pot. I just toss it and there it goes. Just gather up the corners of the sheet and take it out to your compost. Several years ago, I had a whole lot of beans that had been marred by stink bugs. Now, I can't eat those, but I thought, what if I save them and see if they'll sprout? And sure enough, they will grow another bean plant. So these are fine to save for seed. Here's a few that were in the pods. These are not going to make plants. You can just go ahead and discard those. They're still green, they're not fully mature, and they're just not far enough along to make another plant. This is about half of what I need to plant my beans again next year. So I hope the weather will cooperate and let me try again next year. This year's yield is less than I would like, but that happens. There's just nothing I can do about too much rain. These are the Ford hook beans. There might be that much more out on the vines, but that means I'm going to need every seed that's viable in here to plant for next year. So I don't get any Ford hook beans to eat this year. I have seen years where they don't do well, and I've seen years where they are just bumper crops. I believe it all has to do with the weather, how much rain you're getting, how hot it is. It's been really hot, really quick this year, and then we've been deluged with terrible rainstorms until just a couple of days ago. All of that can factor in whether you're going to have a good crop that year. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Just don't give up. When I save seed, I want it to be the easiest way possible. And for me, living in Central Florida, it's not good to try to dry your seeds outdoors. So I'm going to take you inside and show you how I have saved my seed. And we'll talk about those tips and things to avoid. I've been saving bodacious corn seeds for several generations now. I think I'm on year 4 or maybe even 5. This past year, I planted them. It was a complete fail, and that was a big surprise to me because I've never had any problem with them. The problem wasn't with the seed. It was just some gardener's mistakes that I made. The good news is I didn't plant all of my bodacious seed, so I have enough to continue on next year. This corn here is just some smaller ones that I missed when I was picking them, and they're not the best seed saving seeds or ears that you would want to save from. If you want to earmark your best corn, mark them in some way so that you don't harvest them, and leave them until they're kind of tough and started to shrivel up. Then you can pick them and bring them on inside so that they can finish drying. Once they are totally dry on the cob, then it's just a matter, twist them off. They come off really, really easy. Do you see how many kernels that is? That's going to make a ton of corn. Corn seed that I will spend the money on is Silver Queen and Golden Queen. I couldn't find the Golden Queen this year, so that's why I had this mix of corn here. The Silver Queen, I'm really thinking I'm going to go ahead next year and try to save it It does get crossed because I grow it at the same time as I do yellow corn, and that's okay. The Silver Queen had a larger ear, even though some of it was yellow. So I'm thinking maybe I'm going to pick up some of the best traits of both the yellow and Silver Queen. So I'm probably going to save the seed next year and see what comes of it. It's always good to experiment. But don't put all your eggs in one basket. You might want to save some back just in case you want to keep your lines very pure. And that's going to be difficult with a hybrid corn. However, if you do save it from year to year to year, by the time you get to about the third or fourth year, you are going to have a strain of corn that works well for you. So why not go ahead and get started? If this video is helpful, give it a green thumbs up and be sure to subscribe. I have lots of other things I would love to share with you. I homeschooled our kids for over 20 years, and we did a lot of unit studies. I've created some small workbooks for your kids all about plants, seeds, stems, leaves, flowers. I think you'll like it. Visit my Etsy shop. One variety of vegetables that I do not save the seed from year to year is cucumbers. Cucumbers just cross-pollinate with each other, and I'm still trying several varieties, trying to find the best one that works for me. I have a real problem with downy or powdery mildew. I'm not sure which one it is, but I do battle it year after year. So I'm still doing experiments with my cucumbers. So I'm not saving the seeds from those. If you want to learn about how to save seeds from your cucumbers, fast forward to squash. I'll get to it there. Next on the list is peanuts. Peanuts are a great crop to grow 3 seasons in Florida: spring, summer, and fall. These seeds here are from my freezer, and I didn't date them. It's a good idea to date them. I did not know peanut seeds would lose their viability over the years, but these did. I planted a whole bed of these, and they didn't come up, and I was wondering, what did I do wrong? Did something eat them? But then I planted some peanuts from peanuts that had come up volunteer, and I already harvested this year, and I went ahead, cracked open those peanuts, planted these, and they all came up. So the verdict is they must lose their viability over the years, even if they're in the freezer. So keep your peanuts going year after year and keep your seeds fresh so that you won't be disappointed like I was. Saving seeds from peanuts are so easy. You just wait until they're ripe. You can dry them, and it is easier if you let them dry for 3 or 4 weeks before you crack them open. And then just plant the seeds that you just cracked open. And you want to know another secret? You don't even have to shell them, because they come up volunteer out there in the garden from peanuts that I didn't find. But I'm kind of a little nerd that way. I shell them, and then each one of these becomes a plant. Another favorite southern vegetable that I love growing are black-eyed peas. They interplant with corn really well, so that's a little tip for you there. Black-eyed peas, zipper peas. Here is a purple whole pea that someone gave me as a gift. I haven't tried them yet. I'm sure they'll do just fine. But let me talk to you a little bit about saving the seeds. The way that you know that the seeds are ready to be harvested is, in the case of zipper peas or black-eyed peas, you wait until the pods are starting to turn color, yellow, maybe even starting to get brown. Now, it's a little bit tricky at that point. Go ahead and pick the whole pods at that point and let them finish drying inside. If they are that ripe, it's probably coming up into June or so, and that's when we start getting the daily showers and heavy thunderstorms, and the seed can actually start to spoil inside the holes at that time. That's why I have some of these still in the pods. I picked some after it started getting to that point where we're getting the daily showers, and I didn't want them to spoil inside the pods. And you see how easy this is? You just crumble them up and the peas just pop right out. So don't think that you've got to shell the peas and then let them dry out. I mean, you can, but it's just so much easier to wait till the pods are dry and pop them open. See how easy that is? The zipper peas, the purple hull peas, any kind of cow peas, southern peas, same way. Just let the pods finish drying inside. And look how many peas you get. You see how some of these peas have spots in them? Those peas have been stung by the stink bugs. That also will sting your beans. Don't throw those peas away. Put them over here in your plates and let them dry indoors so that they don't spoil. They make great seeds. Next on the list is pepper seeds. I personally don't save pepper seeds because, for one, I'm not real successful in growing peppers. I don't know why yet, but I keep trying and will continue to try. Pepper seeds are pretty inexpensive too. You get quite a few in a packet of seeds, and you don't have to use them all unless you are really growing a whole bunch. So just wait until your peppers are really, really ripe, and then pull the seeds out and let them dry. Another one of my favorite subtropical vegetables to grow is Seminole pumpkin. It will grow year-round provided we have a mild winter. If there's a heavy frost or a freeze, then they're not going to last through that. But sometimes we have a mild winter and they will continue to grow on into the next year. Seminole squash is an amazing vegetable. Notice I have no written on this one and an X written on this one. That's to remind myself not to save the seeds from this pumpkin. They will cross-pollinate with yellow squash, zucchini squash, butternut squash, acorn squash, other pumpkins. And the bees are really, really good at pollinating all of those. So I had yellow squash and zucchini squash growing at the same time that these were flowering. And I know that the bees were visiting all of the flowers. You also have to be careful that if you have neighbors or farmers that are growing squash of any kind at the same time that you're trying to grow pumpkin, they will cross-pollinate because the bees do travel. I have a Seminole pumpkin that's getting ripe out in the garden right now, and so I'm going to earmark that one to save the seeds from that one for next year's planting. There are no other squashes in my garden or anywhere around here because it's mid-July and those have all been harvested and pulled up. So be careful if you want to keep your strain pure. This pumpkin right here is probably about the 15th generation, and I have been very careful to keep my Seminole pumpkin pure. Will it hurt if it's cross-pollinated? No, but you won't have a pure strain. And I love the taste of the pure Seminole pumpkin so well, and it's still so prolific that I want to keep it pure, and I want to be careful about when I harvest the seeds from Seminole pumpkin. This is the squash that I plant. I have not saved the seeds from squash yet, but I do know how to tell you how to do that. I have a video where I show you how to hand pollinate your squash. So you want to isolate your squash bush or vine, whichever it is, under some netting that the bees or other pollinators can't get through. So you're going to hand pollinate. Be sure to look at my video that shows you how to do that. Once you're sure that that squash has started to grow and it's really, really healthy, keep an eye on it. It's going to get bigger than normal and it's going to look kind of yucky after a while, but keep a close eye on it. If you wait until it starts to deteriorate, it's possible that your seeds are also going to deteriorate. In other words, they're going to start mildewing and rotting on the inside of that vegetable. So go ahead and pick the squash when it's really big and ripe, to the point that it's going to be too ripe for you to eat. Then you bring it inside, go ahead, break it open, and scrape the seeds out from it and let it finish drying inside in the air conditioning. It really is easy. Very similar to the Seminole pumpkin. Well, here are my tomato seeds. This is a variety that I decided to try this year. It didn't do well for me. I kept the packet just to remind myself to take note in my garden journal not to use this variety. So what's the deal with the paper towels? Remember, I like to keep things really, really easy. Here is a paper towel full of Everglades tomato seeds. Break open your tomato, smear the seeds on a paper towel, and let them dry. Label your paper towel, fold the paper towel up, put it in a Ziploc. That's it. Wait until it's time to plant them. And how do you do that? You don't even have to pick them off the paper towel. Just pull a little section off. Just pull a little section off and plant the whole paper with a seed on it. Plant 2 or 3 in the cell where you're starting them, and voila, you've got 2 or 3 plants coming up. Now, I did do a really extensive video on how to start tomatoes, peppers, and herbs. So look for that in the playlist as well. So let's go over. I have tons of Everglades tomatoes here, and that's kind of funny because now they're coming up volunteer all throughout my garden. Here are volunteer Campara. If a tomato is coming up volunteer and they have done well, you better believe I'm going to keep those volunteers and plant them again. I just like Campara for a salad tomato. Let's see, here's some plum tomatoes that did well for me. What kind of plum tomatoes? I don't remember. I don't know. They're now Debbie's plum tomatoes. If they did well and I saved the seeds, they've done well. Here's some beefsteak. Again, if they've done well and I've saved the seeds and then those seeds have done well, that's now Debbie's beefsteak tomatoes. Beefsteak tomatoes and plum tomatoes are usually a hybrid, at least in my case. They've been bred for Florida weather. If I keep the seeds and then the plants make great tomatoes, then I'm going to keep those seeds and they'll eventually, after another generation or 2, be very, very consistent. Volunteer slicing tomato. Again, Debbie's slicing tomato. And one last one here. A medium tomato and best Italian tomato. All of those are now Debbie's tomatoes. These are vegetables that I grow through the winter months. I do plan on making a separate video on how to save those seeds. And that will probably be all the way next January or February. So there's beets, broccoli, cabbage, carrots, cauliflower, mustard greens. These are spinach, and then some lettuce.
Great